Making a profit from what you grow is so important because it keeps farms alive. Unfortunately, focusing on the bottom line is essential to keeping farms around. There are more options on the table for you to choose from than you can imagine. So for all the backyards, homesteads, big farms, and everything in between, here are the crops that will give you the most bang for your buck. We've decided to compile this list without the addition of grains and fruit. Fruit, for the most part, is an investment that can take years to produce a harvest from, and most grains require huge amounts of space, lots of water, and are rarely grown by regenerative means. So we'll leave those for another day and look at the options that might be less obvious, and most of the time they're a lot easier to grow anyway. Let's get into it. Growing flowers is a notoriously finicky thing to accomplish. They need love, care, and constant attention, and soil conditions and over or underwatering are always at the forefront. Tulips and roses have entire communities around them regarding breeding and exchanging information. Books have been written about single species and their cultivation. It's not for everyone because of the intensity of the care involved, but it is incredibly lucrative and always in demand. Cultivating bonsai trees and bushes is another decorative plant venture to look into. It'll take a few years before your specimens are ready for sale, but since they take so long to cultivate, they go for insane prices. Yes, it takes a long time to get into the market, but the labor is much less demanding. All you need is patience, a set of pruners, and a thirst for experimentation. Cotton. It has the largest demand and price tag of the lot. You don't need miles and miles worth of fields to make a good sale, and there's no shortage of buyers. Cotton can be grown as a perennial or an annual, so it really just depends on what your climate allows and how much you're willing to learn, because growing it is a bit of an art form, full of pests and the need for a natural body of water close by. If you're on the municipal water grid, it just won't be as profitable for you anymore. Cotton is one of those crops that will always find a buyer, regardless of the state of the economy or the world, making it the most stable product that you can grow, as well as being the safest investment to make when buying stocks in the agriculture sector. It's so sellable that even Wall Street's willing to wager on it. Bamboo is a surprisingly easy-to-grow crop that grows as fast as microgreens. Seriously, it grows nearly 3 feet per day, and it's highly valuable as a fuel, food, clothes, textiles, medicinal, and construction material. Its use as a building material is probably where you'll find the highest demand. Besides furniture and as a building material on its own, it also serves as a very good support when constructing bridges, homes, and as scaffolding. The great thing about bamboo is the fact that even a small patch allows you to get a lot out of it because it grows so fast. You can also store it long-term, slowly growing your supply to sell in one large sale at the end of the season if your space is on the smaller side. The only real issue is that bamboo needs heats and copious amounts of compost. The immense energy required to grow at such speeds means that it will be a predictably high feeder. But the amount it produces makes all of the additional needs worth it at the end of the day. So far, we've been talking about crops that require at least some acreage to support them. Of them all, sunflowers need the least amount of space and are the easiest to grow. It also has the widest range of uses of our entire list. High-value oil, the oil seeds for eating, a high-protein animal feed, baking flour, floral arrangements, heck, even the whole stalk, roots, leaves, and all are excellent for fodder. They grow fast, they're drought-resistant, and even if you're growing it in your backyard, you can plant them relatively close together, meaning that you can make products from it yourself to a much larger degree than any other field crop. It's doubtful that sunflower production will ever take a hit on the market. There's just too many ways to use the entire plant. Pumpkin and squash can be used interchangeably in food. It produces quite a lot on a single vine, and it's got the dual purpose of being in high demand as a decorative item and as a source of animal feed. So even the fruits that aren't pretty enough for the shelf or has a spot of rot on it can still be used as a treat for the goats, pigs, and chickens. The thing about pumpkins and squash is that it's not limited in its growing season. We usually grow it as a fall crop just because it's one of the few vegetables that can be grown in cooler temperatures. But it does just as well in summer and spring, too. It can do fine in winter if your area doesn't get cold enough to allow snow, so you might just be able to grow it all year round. And that's why it's profitable. Not because it's worth that much more, but because you can have a constant supply all year if you plan your operation right. Peppers and chilies will be the last of the produce that can be grown in the backyard on our list. Besides being a very popular kitchen aid, both for the home and for restaurants, there's an enormous range of ways that they can be processed and sold. Hot sauces, dried flakes, fresh, and in the form of pastes and stocks, just to name a few. But they also have the additional marketability that most forget, seed sales. Chilies especially have a bit of a fan following, and a die-hard one at that. Horticulturists just love collecting unusual specimens, and they end up with huge collections that rival an art gallery. Entire online forums are dedicated to trading seeds and cultivating new strains through selective breeding. It's a fascinating world, full of trading and experimentation. Both peppers and chilies require the same conditions in which to grow, and it's usually one of those plants that's advised for first-time gardeners since they're just so forgiving. Garlic doesn't need that much room to grow, just the right conditions and plenty of compost. The wait time is quite long, and like all vegetables that take long to mature, that drives up the price. Besides, it's garlic. It's just one of those vegetables that you can't go without, right next to onions, potatoes, and salt and pepper. It's equally valuable as a dehydrated and a canned product, making the scope of your options just so much wider. One backyard can absolutely produce enough garlic to bring in a very decent income at the end of every season. Low-growing herbs like lavender, basil, rosemary, thyme, there are too many to list, are fantastic options for culinary sales and farmers markets. Any bush will deliver an endless amount of harvests, so lack of sales on a bad day won't kill you financially. Ginsberg, tarragon, lemongrass, and sage all sell for more than average, and they won't require any expertise to cultivate. If you have space for trees and your climate is right, vanilla, pepper, and bay leaves are high value too. By far, saffron is the most expensive and time-consuming spice in the world. A single ounce can sell for $500. Almost all of the spices and herbs, no matter what you choose, will require specific climates and conditions to grow. Sure, you get your no-nonsense basil and dill, but a plant like saffron and tarragon needs your constant love and attention. There's a lot of money to be made with the sale of herbs and spices, probably more than any other item on our list, but you need to know what you're doing, and your climate needs to be ideal for what you wish to grow most of the time. Leafy greens like kale, spinach, and lettuce are all relatively easy to grow, don't require very much care, and you can fit a lot into a small space. Any leafy green has a short shelf life, so the only real consideration you need to take is that you need to move your product almost the moment it needs to go out to the shelf. This is also a very oversaturated market since they're so easy to grow and multiple harvests can be made from a single plant relatively quickly, so your main concern will be in networking to get buyers as soon as you can. Mushrooms. They don't take up much space, and you can get weekly harvests with little to no care from you. The species that you can grow is endless, but oyster mushrooms are probably the fastest growing and the easiest of the lot. There are specialty species that will fetch a higher price, like shiitake mushrooms. It all depends on what you feel like taking on. But mushrooms are not nearly as easy or as cheap to get the setup going. You need very specifically cultivated soil. You can produce your own, but it takes time and expertise. Fungi just needs very specific conditions in which to grow. Moisture, soil, and ventilation all need to be taken into account. And like beekeeping, it's one of those ventures that can be very profitable, but it requires more expertise than most people realize. So do your homework before taking it on, and be prepared to make an investment into the equipment before you reap the rewards. And finally, the crop that requires the least amount of space possible. Microgreens have become a bit of a fad among smaller operations. Even if it's not their main source of income, it's such an easy and cheap way to make money on the side that it would be foolish not to set aside a little space in the basement for it. A grow light, some seeds, and trays is all you need, and if you grow anything at all, you probably have all those items already. You can harvest twice a week from a single tray, equating to a massive amount of produce being moved in the fastest amount of time possible. Microgreens for culinary use and sale to restaurants and grocery stores is probably the most common way to get a sale, but if you remember the complications that the pandemic brought to the hospitality industry, you need to realize that it's a very unpredictable market. If for some reason people cannot afford or are hindered from eating out, well, then you suddenly have no one to sell to anymore. There is a sideline for animal feed that many fail to realize is a very viable stream of income. Guinea pigs, rabbits, and birds all benefit from the high nutrient and varied feed that comes from microgreens. But your market doesn't just have to revolve around pets. Chickens, ducks, quail, meat rabbits, and even larger livestock farming actually have a need for high nutrient options for their animals, especially if your greens offer some medicinal value. If that's a market you like to target, choose your greens around plant sorts that can aid with parasites, colic, and other diseases. The medicinal microgreens are just as nutrient-packed as they are good for treating livestock conditions. At least it will widen your market quite a bit. In our honest opinion, our 4 most profitable picks would be mushrooms and spices for the very small spaces, and if you have an acre or more to work with, then it's bamboo and sunflowers. Yes, your climate might need to be right for it, and you definitely need to educate yourself, especially when it comes to growing herbs and mushrooms. But all four have the widest scope of uses. All can produce multiple harvests in a season, and none of them will ever have a hard time being sold, no matter what the state of the economy is. And now we pose the question back onto our viewers. How are you utilizing the space you have, and what gave you the most profit when it came to the harvest? The community at Regenerative Farmers of America is one that helps one another. So if you have any words of wisdom, don't hesitate to share your thoughts and experiences. There is nothing we value more than our viewers' feedback. And while you're at it, why not leave a like, subscribe, and share this with others who could use the extra source of income? Until next time, cheers.